Hello everyone, my name is Stanzi Batenda and welcome back to my channel. And if this is your first introduction to me, oh boy. Today's video is gonna be a little bit different if you couldn't already tell by the title. Today, when I am filming this, it is July 22nd, which is the day before the anniversary of a life-altering near-death experience that I had. Some of you might already be familiar with this story. I have talked about it online before. I've talked about it on other podcasts, but I have not done like an in-depth video about it on my own page, so I thought that I would do that today. So, buckle up. And yes, before we like jump right into it, please note that this did happen to me 18 years ago. I had a lot of time to work through this, so if it seems like I'm talking lightheartedly about this at times, it's simply because I have processed my trauma. I've had a lot of time to deal with this, and I've also told this story a lot, so I've had a lot of experience talking about my trauma, but this is potentially your first time hearing this, so you're going to be having a very different reaction to hearing this than I am telling it. Because I've talked about this story online before, I know that sometimes people have strong reactions to hearing about other people's trauma online. Sometimes people talk about what they would have done in that situation, as if they're Mark Wahlberg talking about how they would have stopped 9/11. That's a real thing, by the way. You should look it up. Life happens. Bad things happen. There are no do-overs. We can't dwell on what we would have done differently. We can only come to terms with what happened and move on. And lastly, let me just say that before I begin, I will be talking about some intense themes throughout this video. Not only will I be talking about my near-death experience, I'm also going to be talking about how it impacted me after it happened. So if you are uncomfortable with topics of like death, dying, mental illness, self-harm, now is your time to leave. So let's get into it. So this happened when I was 11 years old. It was the summer of 2007, and I had just finished theater camp with my younger sister Nella, who's 2 years younger than I am, and one of my mom's coworkers had invited us to go to her summer house, or like her beach house, for the weekend. And so we did. My younger sister and I went with my mom to go hang out at this beach house. I think that my mom probably wanted to distract my younger sister and I from the fact that our dad was actually moving out of state that weekend. We were obviously very sad about that. He was moving to Philadelphia. We were living in Boston. So I think she just wanted to give us like something fun to do that weekend to take our minds off of it. And in a bad, fucked up way, I guess it worked. Also, one more thing, just please respect like the privacy of anyone I talk about in this video. I haven't talked about this story on my own page with the amount of followers that I have now, so I don't know like how weird people are gonna be about this, so just please like respect anyone else that I talk about in this video. Please don't like look people up and try to, I don't know, like sometimes people are weird. I think that you guys are cool for the most part, so just please respect other people's privacy. Thank you. So we went to this beach house. It was my mother's coworker's beach house, and she had a husband named Jim, and then they had a granddaughter that was around my sister and I's age, and so we were all hanging out. They had dogs, we were running around the beach. It was a great day. We had a lot of fun. We had so much fun, in fact, that my younger sister and I were invited to sleep over, and we were like, yeah, like I'm down to do that. My mom was like, well, I gotta get home, so like I'm gonna go home, you guys are safe here, so it's like fine. So we did that. We hung out with the granddaughter, we talked all night, and the next morning we were like gonna go back to the beach. It was a private beach, by the way, so it was like we had the whole thing to ourselves, kind of. It's sort of like interesting the details you remember from things like this. So like I remember in the morning they made us Bisquick pancakes, and so we had some of those. And I just looked outside and I was like really excited to like go swimming. Me, my sister Nella, and the granddaughter, jumped in the water and we're having a good time, just like how any normal kids would do at the beach. And there wasn't like a storm outside, but it was like gray out. So the weather wasn't like too bad, but it did like get worse as the day went on. I was in the water and I started to feel like I was getting like further away. And it started off kind of like slowly. It was like, I'm like standing right next to my sister and the granddaughter, and then all of a sudden I'm kind of like, there's some distance starting to form between the three of us. And then I'm having a hard time like touching my feet like onto the sand. And I'm like, uh-oh. Because like I was an okay swimmer, but I wasn't like a great swimmer. And I look at them and I'm kind of like, hey, can one of you guys like help pull me back? Because I'm feeling like I'm being like pulled out. And the granddaughter looked at me and she looked like she was gonna start crying. And she was like, I can't go out that far. And then I was like, oh. That was like the first moment of feeling like I might be in trouble here. And so I'm trying really hard to swim back and it's just not happening. What I didn't know at the time was I had gotten caught in a riptide, and I was just being dragged further out. And if you know anything about riptides, you know that you can't really like fight back, especially not like an 11-year-old kid. There are adults that get swept away in riptides and die. People, that's like not an uncommon thing, is to, drown in riptides. So I, as an 11-year-old kid, am like stuck in a riptide. I'm like, uh-oh, I'm trying to fight this thing and it's not working. And so I start yelling for help. I keep going under the water and like coming back up. And I'm just trying desperately to like stay afloat, basically. I'm just trying everything I can to like keep my head above the water. And immediately, as soon as he heard me yell for help, Jim jumps into the ocean. I don't even think he took off his raincoat. He just like jumped in and immediately started swimming towards me. But even as he's swimming towards me, I'm still getting pulled further out. So I don't even know how long it was that I was in the water for. It felt like an eternity because I was certain that I was gonna die. There came a point where I was like, oh, I think this is it. Because my younger sister was still in the water. She was still in the water, like watching me, and she was crying, which was just like a horrible feeling. I, at some point, just kind of accept the fact that I'm gonna die, but I'm trying to like give it my best shot because maybe there's a small chance that I'll make it out of here. But I kind of just was like, oh, I think this is it. I don't think I'm getting out of here. And so I just keep doing what I'm doing. I'm like trying everything I can to keep myself above the water. My arms were burning. They were burning from how much paddling I was doing. I just felt like my muscles were on fire. My arms were on fire. I could feel that they were like close to, they started to go numb because of just this like unyielding amount of paddling that I'm doing to just try to not go under the water. Eventually Jim gets to me and the first thing I say to him, it was like, I'm gonna die. And he was like, no, you're not. And he eventually like gets a hold of me and we start going back. We start to swim back towards the shore, but he's like going under too, so he's struggling as well. So it's not easy. It wasn't like he got me and then we just made it back and everything was fine. He was struggling too. So now both of us are kind of like struggling to keep our heads above the water. He's obviously like holding on to me, so he doesn't have both of his arms to really use. So we're just trying to work together to like get closer to the shore. Eventually his wife sees what's happening. So she immediately comes outside and she gets in the water too. And she just calmly walks over to us and gets as close as she can. And when she gets close enough to me, she takes my bathing suit and she just like pulls me back. And I'll never forget what it felt like to feel my feet against the sand because all of a sudden I had like my life back, basically. I don't even know how to like express the feelings that I felt in that moment because I didn't think I was gonna make it out of there. But the story doesn't end there. So Jim and his wife are, and by the way, the reason why I'm referring to her as his wife is because I don't want to like give out too much information. I feel like I owe it to him to use his name so that people know who he is and like know his name. But the reason I'm not using her name is because I also don't want to give out too much information about these people. Like I said before, sometimes people are weird online and I just don't want to give out too much information, but I'm not doing it as like a disrespect to her. I'm just doing it to like try to respect the privacy of the family as much as I can. But anyway, Jim and his wife were still in the water. The weather's getting a little bit worse. The water's choppier, it's a little more aggressive. They start yelling for help. There's like not a lot of people on the beach. It's a private beach in the first place, but also like the weather isn't like great. Luckily, there's a man in a kayak in the water and he sees this happening. So he immediately goes over to them and he starts trying to help them get out of the water. And eventually he's able to get them back on the beach. But when Jim is pulled back onto the beach, he's unconscious. He's not breathing. While Jim was pulling me out of the water, he had a heart attack. So he had a heart attack while he was pulling me out of the water. When he got to the beach, he was unconscious and they tried to do CPR, but he passed away. And of course I was immediately changed forever. The person I was before that experience was no more. I was forever changed. For a while, I obviously felt an immense amount of guilt. I felt like it was entirely my fault. I felt like I was the reason that someone's husband, father, grandfather, friend was not alive anymore. And I felt the weight of that responsibility for a really long time. That is called survivor's guilt. I remember pretty immediately after that happened, anytime someone would come over the house, they would be like, hey, what happened? Because they like knew that this thing happened, but they didn't have all the information. So they would be like, what happened? What is going on? And I would look to my mom and I would be like, all right, this is you're up. And I would just let her take the wheel. And I would leave the room as she talked about what happened because I couldn't talk about it. I wanted to put it in the back of my brain so badly. I didn't want to think about it. I think part of me just wanted to pretend that it never happened. I didn't know what to do. I wanted so badly to run from it, but it had consumed me in a way that I don't think is possible to understand unless you've ever been in an experience like that. Which I hope you haven't, but if you have, you might be able to relate to that feeling. Not only was I dealing with this intense feeling of remorse, but I was also dealing with the fact that I had just, for the first time ever, had to confront my own mortality. Prior to this, I was a semi-normal middle schooler that was dealing with pretty typical problems you deal with in adolescence. And suddenly, I was someone that just confronted my own mortality and realized how very fragile my existence is. And as I was watching my sister watching me about to die when I was in the water, I was very quickly trying to make peace with my own demise. As my arms were burning, as I was trying to keep myself above the water, I silently said my goodbyes to my mom, my sisters, my dad, and I felt sad knowing how much pain this was going to cause them. And so I went from accepting my demise to preparing for 6th grade. And I was doing shit like my summer reading. And I was having a really hard time adjusting to life after having this earth-shattering experience. Obviously, I was dealing with PTSD, and it would manifest in some very disturbing ways for me. Pretty shortly after, I was having like horrible nightmares. I remember every time I went to bed, I would get that feeling that you sometimes get where you feel like you're falling and then you jolt awake. I was getting that, but I would feel like I was floating on waves. And so I would jolt awake because I felt like I was in the water. I had one dream where I was at my own wake and everyone I knew was around my casket singing at my corpse. And when I walked up to my corpse, it was just like, I wasn't put together, like I wasn't dressed up like how you would dress up a dead person in a casket. I was soaking wet, like they had just pulled me out of the water and basically plopped me into a casket. And so I walked up to my casket and I just saw my body right after I had drowned. And I was like screaming and I woke up hysterically crying. And so I was dealing with stuff like that. One of the dreams that I had that really stuck with me was this dream where I was in the backyard of one of my old houses that I lived at, and I was getting chased by a black horse that started to kick me after it had caught up to me, and it was like kicking me while I was on the ground. And then a white horse came over and it got the attention of the black horse, and I watched as the white horse ran out into the distance while the black horse followed it, and it was like the white horse like sacrificed itself in a way, which we'll come back to later. But I just felt like everyone had moved on except for me. Everyone meaning everyone in my community. I felt like the world kept turning for everyone except me, and that made me really bitter. Obviously I really needed help, and that help was not being provided to me. I should have gotten help immediately after it happened, but I didn't. And my personality started to really change very quickly. Once I was in 6th grade, I took a very sharp turn. And I'll never forget the moment when I decided I was going to be alternative. Like, I was already listening to like sad emo music, but I didn't dress that way at all. But remember, this was like 2007, 2008, so we were in prime time for MySpace. And emo culture was starting to infiltrate society in a big way around this time. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in class one day at my table and I said, I think I'm gonna start dressing goth. And then one of my classmates that was sitting across from me goes, going goth, like a Danny Phantom. And going goth I did. I showed up at school the next day wearing all black and I was like, yep, this is my personality now. I'm sad and angsty. And eventually I bloomed into a full-blown emo scene kid. It was truly a sight to behold. What a great time. That was such an incredible cultural moment. You really had to be there. Well, I don't think we'll ever see that replicated again. But that's a video for a different time. But if I recall correctly, I think I was like one of the first, if not like the first kid in my class to start dressing emo, which was kind of cool because then my friends started to dress emo and goth. I even remember one time my guidance counselor came up to me and she was like, hey, there are these two girls who are a couple of years younger than you and they think that you dress really cool and they want to dress like you too, but they don't really know where to start. They want some advice. Would you be willing to talk to them? And I was like, absolutely. And I did talk to them. And I was like, all right, cool. I feel like a little trendsetter right now. And let me tell you, to this day, one of those girls still follows me on Instagram. And let me just say, she looks like a fucking badass now. She's like full-blown gothic icon, more than I ever was. I'm not gonna lie, it makes me a little bit proud. And, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and take credit for her badassery. I'm just saying, you know, I feel like I helped contribute to it a little bit. I gave her some encouragement and it's a beautiful thing and I'm really happy for her. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I started to dress alternatively and that also came with bullying naturally. But I was already getting bullied for my weight and being weird, so this wasn't anything new. They just had new material to work with. It was interesting though, because despite being bullied by people, I also had a lot of friends, some of whom were considered like the popular kids. So I had a very diverse friend group. So I didn't feel like an outcast, but I was still dealing with a lot of internal problems that had not been worked out. My mental health was getting worse and that started to manifest in the form of self-harm. And I remember like right before I had started doing it, one of my friends was like, oh yeah, there's this girl a couple of grades above us and she's doing this because like she's really emo. Obviously that was like a huge emo stereotype, and I was just like kind of curious about that. So yeah, I like did it one day out of curiosity because I was like, what is she getting out of this? And that is like the beginning of so many stories about addiction. And this was no different. Like, genuinely, this was something that I started that got worse over time, and it became like a huge coping mechanism for me. And obviously that really freaked my family out. They had like no idea how to deal with this. And at this point, I'm barely getting along with anyone in my family. It's just not happening. Honestly, at this point in our lives, like, our family was in shambles. Like, I really had distanced myself from like everyone for a while. My dad was obviously living out of state, and he would eventually also go on to like live out of the country for several years, so there was already some friction there. And my mom and I had a really strained relationship. Like, we were fighting all the time. I just felt like I had no support from her. But also, as a healed adult, I can reflect on that time in my life and empathize with her more. She was a single mom raising 3 kids by herself, no support. She wasn't making a lot of money, and 2 of her kids were going through brutal rebellious phases. Because yes, my older sister, who was like 16, 17 at the time, was also going through her rebellious phase. The most innocent person in all of this is my poor younger sister Nella, who has typically always been the most grounded and civil of us all. And she was caught in the crossfire of all this chaos for years. And I think part of me resented her for a while for being the good one, because I couldn't get my shit together. But I also recognize that my perception of her was unfair. She had her own pain, and she most likely suffered in silence because of how crazy me and our sister Tori were being at the time. And like, teenage rebellion is a normal thing, but it was the fact that we were both going through it at the same time. That was the problem. And I don't know how I would have turned out had I not had my near-death experience, but prior to it, I was like a decent kid. I wasn't really a troublemaker, but I definitely was after that happened. So like, my rebellious phase was kind of premature. So yeah, my older sister and I started our rebellious phases like at the same fucking time. Sneaking out of the house, getting the cops called on us. It was like, it wasn't good. It was a fucking nightmare. So I recognize the nuance of it all. I wish that I had had more support from my parents during that time, but I know that there's just no way to prepare for something like this. I know that they were scared and that they felt guilty. So there's no point in kicking yourself over what you could have done. There's only what you can do now. And I have a great relationship with both of my parents now. I talk to them all the time. My sisters as well. Like, we talk pretty much every day. And I'm really grateful that we all did inner work to become the best versions of ourselves so that we can be in each other's lives. My family is a huge source of joy for me. And I know that there's so many people out there who will never be able to mend those wounds within their family. And I have like friends of mine who will say things like, I wish I had your family. And it makes me laugh because once upon a time, it was a fucking circus. But it also makes me so proud because they're everything to me. I love my family, my whole family, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, like my entire family. I love them so much. That is my circus, and those are my monkeys. And I am the greatest showman, Hugh Jackman. I stole a loaf of bread. Okay, moving on. Enough of this sap fest. Ugh. If any of my sisters are watching, I was lying. Fuck you. Ugh. Okay, anyway, this rebellious phase that I was going through was more than just like fighting with my mom and hurting myself. I was becoming a little shithead. Yeah, when I turned 13, I was doing everything that you shouldn't do when you're a 13-year-old. I was sneaking out of the house, I was drinking, I was smoking cigarettes, I was stealing, I was getting into fights, like fist fights, yes, with my fists. Use your imagination, I was doing that. If it was no good, I was getting up to it. And this continued forever. I was having like insane outbursts, which, you know, like later on I realized were panic attacks. I was obviously like getting up to no good. I was causing trouble, but also I had a lot of adult figures during my like school years that recognized that like I wasn't doing this because I was a bad kid. I was doing this because like something was going on. So I did have a lot of teachers that were like looking out for me. I was causing problems, but I was also like, I was class president my freshman year of high school. Like, it was so weird. There were all these like contrasting things about me as a person, and like all these like adult figures being like, what is going on with you? Like, you have potential to like do good things, like great things. They were like seeing me act and sing and write and stuff. So they were like, you have this in you. Why are you acting like a fucking insane person? They didn't say that, obviously, because I was a child, but you know, eventually things like sort of started to like move in a better direction. I moved out of the town that I was living in my sophomore year of high school, which was kind of like difficult, obviously, because like at that point in your life, like people already have connections, like everyone's already kind of like formed friendships with other people. But during my sophomore year of high school, I really started to get back into theater. The year prior, I had decided I wanted to pursue acting. Obviously, I had been doing theater before that, but like I finally decided like, I think this is what I want to do with my life. And it was because I had watched HBO's miniseries, The Pacific, and it really had a big impact on me. One of the characters played by Joe Mazzello had this character that was like dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder from the war, and when he gets back home from the war, he's like still processing what had happened to him, but like everyone else had moved on, and I felt like that. So I felt like I related to this character that was like having such a hard time adjusting to life after what he had experienced. I was so moved by it, and I was like, I want to make people feel like that. So I was like, I want to like pursue acting. So my sophomore year of high school, I really started to get back into theater. I was doing community theater, and I was hanging out with a better crowd, a crowd that my mom liked and trusted. So that kind of like relieved some of the tension between us. And her and I were also doing shows together. That was like really fun, and I think that helped with our relationship a bit. But as like some things in my life were moving in a better direction, my harming habits had actually gotten worse. And it got to a really bad point my senior year of high school. I was dead set on going to school to pursue theater. And that fall of my senior year, I was doing 3 shows. And I remember like right around my 18th birthday, my mom and I had gotten into like a fight. It was like a stupid fight, but it really pissed me off, and it like caused me to have a panic attack. I remember I smashed a glass onto the ground, and then I went upstairs into my bathroom, and I hurt myself in a pretty bad way. I was like, uh-oh, my leg looks like the fountain at the Bellagio. Not good. Okay. So immediately my panic attack ended, and the adrenaline started to kick in. I was like, oh mother, methinks I need a little visit to the emergency room. Prepare the chariot. And so we like go to the ER, and I'm like, okay. And so while we're waiting for them to like sew me the fuck back together, I look at my mom and I'm just like, look, I'm a lead in 3 separate shows right now. I can't go to a mental hospital. And thank God she's a theater nerd, because she was like, yeah, like, I get it. So when the nurse came over and was like, do you think she's a danger to herself or others? We were like, no. Now some of you might not think that's funny, but let me just tell you, I knew in my soul that I was done with that. I knew I was not gonna be doing that again. And I really didn't. I was like, okay, I need to find a better way to cope with everything that I'm feeling. I need to learn how to regulate my emotions, because that can't happen again. And so 2 days after my 18th birthday, I left the emergency room with, funny enough, 18 stitches and a couple of crutches. That wound did leave a giant scar on my right calf, but when I was 21, I covered it up with a tattoo in honor of Jim. So remember earlier when I said that I had this dream about the white horse saving me? I got that tattoo in honor of him. That was the first tattoo I ever got. I was left with like a lot of other scars too from my years of doing that. And there was like a period of time where I was like, oh my God, I'm like covered in scars. This is like terrible. I was like, oh my God, like everyone's gonna see these scars and it's gonna be so embarrassing and terrible. And now I don't really care. I do have like one of my legs covered with a giant Gojo tattoo, and my other leg, I'm planning on getting that covered at some point as well, but it doesn't like, it's not a source of shame for me at this point in my life. I'm not embarrassed about them. It's just kind of is what it is. It's part of like my history. Eventually I graduated and I went to UMass Boston to study theater arts. I didn't immediately start seeking mental health treatment because my epilepsy had actually gotten really bad my freshman year of college. I was having seizures all the time and I needed to take care of that. So that was like my main focus. But my sophomore year, I eventually started going to therapy. It helped me so much. So it was like finally nearly like a decade after I had had this near-death experience, I finally was able to process the trauma that I experienced. And I started to learn how to cope. And I don't even think I realized how much I had healed through therapy until I had like moved out of the state in like 2022. I was like, I finally felt like a real adult because I had moved out of my mom's house. I started to like reflect on my past and I no longer just saw myself as a victim. I also considered how the pain that I was feeling impacted those around me. Because there's that saying, right? Hurt people, but being hurt doesn't absolve you of responsibility for hurt that you cause. And once I changed my perspective, I remember like I apologized to my younger sister because I was like, man, you deserved a way better, like bigger sister, and you deserve to have someone that looked out for you during that time. But I was like too absorbed in my own pain to be the sister that you deserved. Because also, you know, even though I was the one that almost died, she was there that day, and that was traumatic, like in its own way, having to like watch that happen. So I wanted her to know that I recognize that. And I don't think this is like an uncommon experience to allow your own pain to impact the relationships that you have with other people, but it is like your responsibility to like try to fix that and like work on yourself. And around that time, like I had been officially diagnosed with PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, and panic disorder. But at this point in my life, I don't really feel the impact of those things just because of like all the work that I've done over the years to heal. I haven't had a panic attack or an anxiety attack in years. I will say that I do also struggle with OCD. I think about death and dying a lot, and sometimes I do go into like a dark headspace, but I know how to ask for help when I need it or like reach out for support. I will say that to this day, I do not go in the ocean or any open water for that matter. And that's fine with me. Like I don't feel like I'm missing out on much. If I'm being honest, I don't think anyone should go in the ocean. Stay on land. Okay, unless it's your job. Unless your job is ocean, stay on land. If I was the president, I would make going into the ocean illegal unless it's your job or you're James Cameron, because he really likes to go visit the Titanic, and I'm not going to take that away from him. But anywho, one of the reasons why I decided to talk about this in depth is because I felt like there might be some people out there who can relate to some of the things that I've experienced, and you might be dealing with some of those things right now, and I just want you to know that it does get better. But you have to fight for yourself, and you have to like be your own champion. I remember when I was 17, I was in this show, and after the show had ended, I went upstairs and someone from the box office handed me a note, and it was from one of my 6th grade teachers that had no idea that I was in the show, but like went to see this show, saw that I was in it, and then like left a note afterwards. And she left this note saying that she was really proud of me and that she loved watching me succeed, and that made me feel like so great. Like she was one of the people that was really encouraging me during that time and like saw my potential. So I think back to that time and all of the people who saw that I was struggling but like saw my potential and were constantly encouraging me to pursue greatness. And I hope that they know that I'm making it now. Like I'm doing it, and you can too. And this like pain does not define you as a person. For a long time, I did feel some pressure to achieve greatness and do like crazy, incredible things because I felt like I owed it to Jim. And now that I'm where I'm at currently in my life, I have achieved incredible things that I never thought were gonna be possible for me. I now recognize that I would have been worth saving regardless. I think living a happy and fulfilling life is the best thing that you can do when you're given a second chance, and it's definitely honoring the person that saved me. A few years ago, I watched this movie with Adam Driver and Greta Gerwig called White Noise, and I related to it a lot because it was about confronting and making peace with your own mortality and the struggle to return to normalcy after doing so. There are a lot of absurdist themes in the movie, and I learned a lot about the philosophical concepts of existentialism, nihilism, and absurdism when I was in college. And all of them have like different interpretations of like how to reckon with the meaninglessness of life. And I really vibed with the concept of absurdism, which acknowledges the inherent meaninglessness of life, but encourages us to rebel against the meaningless. It encourages us to find joy in the face of meaninglessness. Life is this strange, complicated, bizarre experience. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it feels terrible, but we only get one shot to embrace it. And every day I'm grateful that I get to continue this journey. Because of this man, I got to, meet my new baby sister Sophia. I got to meet her. I got to do incredible things with my life. I got to meet all of you. And every time, I get to do something cool, even the things that aren't cool, even when I just get to have a very normal average day, I am very grateful for it. And I hope that if you are someone that's struggling right now, you are able to find a healthy outlet to cope with the feelings that you're having, and that you have at least one person that you're able to confide in. It's really hard being open and vulnerable and asking for help, but it is a vital, necessary step towards healing. There's so much that that can be said about this whole experience, but I don't want to make this video even longer. So let me just sort of end with this. It's all about perspective. Rather than continuing to think about this as the day I almost died, I will be thinking about this as the day that I was saved. While this story was tragic in so many ways, it's also a story about some of the goodness in humanity. Jim was a hero. This man that I hardly knew risked everything to save me. And I am forever grateful for that. And I carry him with me every day. And I hope that by sharing this with other people, his memory will also live on in a bigger way. And if I have ever done anything that has left a positive impact on you, it was only made possible by this man who saved my life when I was a kid. We don't know how much time we're given, so embrace every minute. Enjoy the ride, and please keep your hands and feet inside at all times. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. Please be kind to yourselves, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!